Okay, like she said, I'm Stacy Cox. I'm a special agent with alcohol law enforcement. I'm actually the special agent in charge of the Western District of North Carolina, which encompasses 16 counties at this end of the state. I currently have 8 agents that I oversee and an office assistant, so we're not great in numbers, but we are great in territory. I started out, as she said, at the School of the Arts, my law enforcement career in Winston-Salem. Absolutely loved it there. Tiny campus. I don't know if any of y'all have been there. Super, super cool area. Absolutely loved it there, but it was really small, and honestly, the kids were so good, I was really bored. So I decided to go ahead and stay with the state because I do enjoy state employment, and went ahead, came on with these folks, and they accepted my application. So I stayed in the Winston-Salem district, and I worked there for a number of years. Worked up in Surrey and Yadkin counties, went down to Charlotte for a while, went back to the Hickory district, stayed in Morganton for about 5 months, and then ended up here when the supervisor up here retired. I went ahead and made the jump and transferred up here. Love the area. It's absolutely wonderful. Born and raised in western New York State, which is a lot like this, just the mountains are a little bit smaller. Not to be confused with New York City. I've actually never even been to New York City, if that makes any sense. But being a country girl, I had no interest in going to the big city. Toronto was closer, so if I wanted to see the Broadway shows, I'd go to Toronto to see them. So I've been here in North Carolina since '96, so I've been here a while. I don't have the heavy New York City accent. I'm the western side of the state country girl accent. So anyways, glad to be here, and I'm glad that you facilitated this, and I have the opportunity to talk to you. What I decided to do with this, I did a few modifications to our normal PowerPoint where we give it to people who own bars and restaurants, not exactly being sure of who all would be here, and I've added some things that are specific to nonprofits and things like that. I do very much welcome an open forum. I have my PowerPoint to keep me on track, so if anybody has a question, feel free to just raise your hand or just jump in and let's talk about it while it's on your mind so you don't forget. I'll get back on track, so it's just important to me to keep that dialogue open. I know there's been a lot of media coverage of some of the festivals and things that have been happening in town. And just on the front end, I'd like to say I've really been doing my best before the media hit to get out and start education, because I did start to see some problems with rule violations as far as serving alcohol at a lot of the festivals go. And most of it is just kind of basic shopkeeping and trying to get everybody in line. We did not start working on this to be heavy-handed. There's the rumor going around. I've heard some amazing rumors. Number one is that we're having a crackdown. Well, there's no crackdown. If we were having a crackdown, we'd be bringing agents in from all over the state. We'd be issuing citations and really going overboard. But instead, we are really trying to educate. And if we see a problem that's egregious, we have to deal with it. We're state police officers, and this is what we're tasked to do. And even with that said, I have some options with that, and I'll explain some of that in a few minutes. So the thing to keep in mind is I don't know who all of your affiliations are, but if you want to go ahead and set up a class, I'll be happy to come and do some more training. I can tailor it to what you're looking for, or I can have one of my agents do it. I kind of opened up this can of worms in the area, so I'm trying to be the good leader and go ahead and handle it and not put it on my agents, but keep them up to speed. So glad to be here. One of the things that I wanted to just explain on the front end is when it comes to alcohol laws and alcohol rules, we're looking at two separate things, and we were discussing a little bit of that earlier. But the State ABC Commission, North Carolina Alcoholic Beverage Control Commission, is the entity in the state that issues ABC permits. They also oversee their permits. They're the ones that sanction permittees. They're the ones that can suspend or revoke a permit or fine people based on those permits, fine businesses, not individuals. As a law enforcement agency, we do not work for the ABC Commission. We work with them. We report our findings out here, and we let them make the decision on how they're going to handle any violations that we detect. But I don't have the ability to come in and take somebody's permit or anything like that, nor do any of my agents. Basically, we report to the ABC Commission a lot of times. If they revoke a permit, they'll send us out and we will take the permit, but there's a process. There is due process with that outside of major issues. An example would be paparazzi, if any of y'all have heard about that. There's a killing that happened down there earlier this year, and we went ahead, we worked the process, did a ton of affidavits with the local police departments and EMS workers, and we ended up getting their permits revoked within a few days. We had what was called a summary suspension done. So when it comes to a serious, continuing, ongoing problem, we work very closely with the ABC Commission to get those problems into correction. If something egregious like that happens, then we go into kind of swift action. So ABC Commission, permitting, alcohol law enforcement, we're police officers, but we do oversee the rules. So when it comes to the ABC Commission and the state laws, there's Chapter 18B covers all the alcohol laws in the state of North Carolina. Okay, so whether it's an underage drinking, an over-serving, elections, voting, it's pretty broad. But anything that pertains to alcohol, with the exception of DWI, which is handled under traffic, is under this Chapter 18B, and that's what we specialize in, alcohol law enforcement does. Now, the ABC Commission also pays attention to those things, and we include those in any violation reports to them, but they can't take legal action on it. They can take civil action, administrative action on the permit. So, along with your 18B laws, we also have what are the ABC rules. So, I should have brought the book in. It's about that thick, and probably about half of it is laws, and the other half is rules. So the ABC rules are not criminal offenses. So if I detect a violation that's a rule violation, I can go ahead and I can send it up to the ABC Commission for them to make a determination how they want to handle it, but I can't give you a ticket and you can't go to jail for it. So I just want to make that clear. Laws and administrative rules.
So does that also mean that you're not involved in, say, the initial issuance of permitted, like your brewery permit?
Well, it's actually interesting. They did a big study a couple years ago, and up until about 2 years ago, we actually did the background investigations. We're still involved in those. But this audit that was done, they decided, whoever it was that sponsored it, decided that it would make more sense for the ABC Commission to hire their own investigators and handle those investigations, because you didn't need to be a sworn law enforcement officer to do them. So they hired non-sworn personnel to handle those, to free us up to work on other things. Now, with that, there still has to be a criminal background investigation, and we still handle that. And then we report it to the ABC investigator, whether somebody is a suitable or non-suitable employee, and a couple other things that are kind of important for them to know. So if you are applying for a permit outside of a special one-time permit, a regular annual permitting process, an ABC investigator will come in and meet with you and go over some of the rules and laws and everything. The gentleman that was just brought into this area probably about 5 months ago, his name is Richard Thorson. Young guy, smart, he's doing a good job. He actually does work in my office. We let him use a desk at our office, and he works out of there. He's not there much, though, so he pops in the morning and then checks in again when he leaves, and that's about it. So, yes and no and yes.
It sounds like mostly, for what I'm thinking about, other than the background checks,
yeah,
it's a different route.
Yes, it is. That's the ABC Commission. Now, what he had asked about earlier was local ABC officers. Somebody mentioned El Batago, and he's the chief of the local ABC entity. So once mixed beverage gets voted into a town, the ABC board is assembled, and the ABC board can start their own law enforcement entity. So Asheville ABC is also a sworn law enforcement agency. They oversee the entire county, basically, because when they were put into play, Asheville was the only place in the county that had alcohol sales. And of course, since then, everything has branched out. So they still have that jurisdiction throughout the county. 18B 500 actually gives them the same jurisdictional powers and authorities within their county that we have. And it's always great when you have a town that has a local ABC, because I think I mentioned I've got basically 7 agents and 1 assistant supervisor to oversee everything in 16 counties, so we need as many people as we can to kind of oversee things, because we can't be everywhere seeing everything. So brief history, a little bit of understanding. I think sometimes that helps as I'm going through things, so I apologize if I wore you out with technical data. So who is everybody here representing? Are we mostly nonprofits? Are we representing businesses? Or just kind of curious?
Nonprofit.
We're both here.
Okay.
And you're what, business or?
Well, I've got a bar in Tryon, and
Okay.
we also do a beer fest in Tryon.
Okay.
So I think you talked with Shelley a week or so ago.
Yeah.
That's on our committee.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, very cool. Yeah.
I'm with the Asheville Downtown Association.
Okay.
I'm the
Awesome.
chairman of the events committee. And
Awesome.
you're getting our Jamie.
I know, I'm so
He's
happy.
running the beer festival down in Tryon. One of our best employees.
I oversee multiple breweries as a consultant.
Okay,
Primarily
super.
on the financial, but I worked with a lot of startups and expanding breweries,
Yeah.
and they always want events going on, so I'm advising them.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I do encourage phone calls, and some of you I know I've spoken with multiple times, and anything I can do to help you get on track and operate your festivals more efficiently. A lot of that responsibility will fall on the brewers if you're inviting them in, but it helps at least if you know, and you can direct them if they aren't familiar with the process. So,
I'm actually with Cider Fest, which
Okay.
is a little bit of a new.
yeah, which now falls under wine. They changed it. It was malt beverage, and then they changed it to wine. So either way.
We're with the Laugh Fest.
Okay. Yep. Awesome. Yeah, everybody seems to be getting their industry approval for that. I know there's some concerns. Were you one of the people I was talking to?
Yes, it was.
Which?
Joanna.
Okay, wonderful. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice
The
to
ladies
put
right
a
here.
face with a name.
I'm restaurant, a hotel restaurant, but I'm also nonprofit for the Bartenders Guild, National
Okay.
Bartenders Guild.
Sweet.
We're opening up a small brewery in Weaverville,
Okay.
package only. So, wanted to find out more about, the intricacies of what laws are different for someone who doesn't allow the public in to the brewery for the most part.
Oh yeah. And some of that stuff, and some of this stuff we might not cover today, but if you have specific questions, I'll give you the answers I can, and if we can't get it hashed out today, we'll go offline next week and we'll start talking about things. The agent in your area is going to be Jeremy Jenkins, great guy to work with if you haven't met him yet.
Not Bradley.
In Weaverville now. So you've worked with Bradley?
Well, we have a meeting with him next week.
Okay.
Sir?
I represent small business classes through the community college, really doing technology programs, but I see so many events going on and how to promote event. This whole area seems to do events very, very well,
Yeah.
and alcohol is a portion of it, so
Yes.
I wanted to be introduced to the rules and framework in which an event creation and specifically what can be promoted, what can be said, not said, or
Sure.
the rules around that.
Sure. We might be here all night.
The gentleman in the blue hat in the very last row?
Yeah, I volunteer with Downtown Association, so I pour a lot.
Okay.
Super.
Well, and this really came to us because really, as a nonprofit, we do lots of events, and we typically will serve alcohol. Some that we get donated, some that we buy. We do concerts on the river. We want to make sure we're doing it right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, and this is a small portion of every nonprofit's revenue stream. I don't
Yes.
think there's anybody who wants to do it wrong. So we just want to make sure that not only could we get a refresher course, but that we could provide a refresher course for anybody who wanted it. So
Yeah. Super.
I think so. There's a good cross section of folks here with interest, and it's something we're all anxious to hear about.
Yeah, and I'm not opposed to doing this more often.
Right.
If you have more of your staff that wants to come in, any of you affiliated with the nonprofits, to get your servers who may be handling that in here to help them. Because the one thing that I always try to stress with anybody that's serving alcohol is the empowerment of you in that position. because if something goes wrong, it's the person who pours or sells that alcohol who's going to be held liable. So it's very important that you understand the power and the authority that you have with that and try to get you up to speed with some of the laws. It's actually a good reminder because I'm sure mine will go off on that.
I have a question
Sure.
right away, just because it affects a lot of people, I think, in the room, and one of my coworkers or cohorts in crime, out of Raleigh this morning, the NCABC, as of 11:30 this morning, said they're no longer granting temporary extension of premise permits for sidewalks and streets statewide.
Really?
So businesses can't do an extension, have a street fest in front of their shops. Can you comment on that?
That's the first I heard of it.
Came out this morning at 11:30. So all these festivals, like an anniversary party for a brewery that was going to go out in the street, can no longer happen.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that's about. It's
Is
like
it temporary, you said?
Yeah, the temporary extension.
temporary extension premises.
Premise.
And basically, as she's describing, a lot of times if your business is at 123 Main Street and maybe you have a large parking lot that's contingent with other businesses or the street festival closes, you could put in for a temporary extension of premises. You do a diagram, show the perimeters of your business, you send it in, and boom, they'd stamp it and say, yes, you can sell and serve in this area on this day during this time. So I'm not sure what that's all about. It's
Interesting to know who's behind getting that law passed.
yeah.
Yeah, that was this morning.
What's the motive?
Yeah.
I don't know, because now like Packapalooza can't happen, the Slide the City event that was going to happen there. All this is like they're taking it away. It can
Yeah.
no longer, the events can no longer happen.
Yeah, that's strange because it's always been a fairly innocuous activity. It's rare that I've ever seen any issues pop up. I can only think of one when I worked in Winston-Salem, so I'm not sure what's going on with that.
Maybe there's another permit that will cover that instead. I'm just guessing.
They're just no longer granting temporary extension of premise permits, so statewide.
See, how come you get that information? I mean, I was at my desk all morning.
Forward it to her.
Because
I
then
just got
somebody
this
going
because
for it.
people, like, they just said, this just went down.
Yeah.
Because one of my, he's an event organizer, he used to live in Asheville, but now he works with the Hibernian chain. So now in Raleigh, and said like this just came out this morning, so it's taken the wind out of a lot of people's sails. And
Absolutely.
covered, with that, and then the sidewalk roping off that after a certain amount of time you can't be outside on the sidewalks on Fayetteville Street anymore. That's citywide Raleigh, but this is statewide, so it concerns me because of the festivals that we do have planned or are in planning.
I am personally just right off the top of my head, and I'm just flying by the seat of my pants here. I'm wondering with the General Assembly being in session right now, if there may not be some other law that's coming out that's caused that, but I'm not. That's just a wild guess on my part.
Okay. I don't
If you
know.
go on the North Carolina General Legislation website, you can see what bills are being introduced. There are some alcohol changes coming up, and maybe there would be something on there. I personally haven't had time to review them fully, but because you never know if they're going to pass or not. So I know they were hoping to be wrapped up by the end of this week, but it looked like they're going to go through the weekend. So who knows? If I find out an answer, I'll be happy to share.
Yeah, that would be. I just know if
Yeah.
it's allowed.
I
If
mean,
they're already, also if you already had the permit before this change went into effect,
They're
they're
taking
honoring
them. They're
those.
taking them away.
yeah, well, it's not an actual permit that you pay for on an annual basis. It's just like a one-time thing, and you put in for it, and I've never seen it not approved.
I know they're
I'm sure they
granting
have.
at least one of our
Yeah.
businesses at Laugh Festival that, and they said they aren't doing that anymore, but we are going to allow you to do that.
It's like a
But that's
grandfather
this
day.
Sunday, so maybe they were just like, we can't cancel
Case
it
by
Yeah.
case.
3 days from now. So
Right.
I don't know. We
Uh,
found that out too a few days ago,
Cool.
but just because we were asking for that.
Well, if y'all
Right.
find out an answer, if you could let me know, because
And if you find out one, you let us know.
everybody
Keep each
thinks that
other
I can just call
informed.
the ABC Commission and get an answer. Well, I can't get an answer any quicker than y'all do.
That's almost impossible.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just you, it's me too, and I'm the one out here that's keeping an eye on things for them, so we figure.
With that being said, is there a online resource? I mean, is there like a Facebook page or is there a website or?
Sometimes, no, I don't think they have a Facebook page. They could though. I can't say I've looked. Sometimes if you go on the ABC website, they do have, I think there's like a news heading in the menu bar. So, and there is a legal section, so I'd imagine any legislative changes And maybe rule changes would be in there also. So I defer to their website on that, but I'm not sure if that's there or not, but probably. So we'll go ahead and dive in unless anybody has something else. We're good? Okay. So goals for today. I will ask you what you hope to learn in bars training today, but being as we're kind of going to be all over the place with things, I'm hoping that you're just going to be open to learning as much as you possibly can about whatever we discuss. So by the end of today, we're going to talk to you about the penalties for selling alcohol to underage or intoxicated persons, when to ask for an identification, how to check an ID accurately before you sell alcohol, recognize when a person has had too much to drink, refuse a sale, and decide what to do in problem situations. A lot of this is very generic, and again, it's kind of meant for business training, but this very much applies to nonprofits and anybody that is also a business owner here that sells alcohol. So if some of it's redundant to you, just bear with me, but hopefully you'll walk away with a few nuggets of wisdom today. So there's some penalties that go with the acts we just talked about. So if you're convicted of selling alcohol to somebody who's under the age of 21, you'll have a criminal record. It's typically, there's some variations, but it's a class 1 misdemeanor. Misdemeanor being an offense that is jailable for up to a year. Now, does that happen? Very rarely. Is anybody put in jail for this? Usually it's fines and community service and that type of thing. And honestly, my agency, when it comes to most of these situations, will work with you in the judicial and court system to try to get you some education and help you through the process, with the ultimate goal being compliance. So these things happen, but anyways, so if you're convicted of selling alcohol to somebody that's 21, basically if you break any law in Chapter 18B and you're convicted of it, you cannot work at a business that sells alcohol for a period of 2 years, which is a pretty stiff penalty. If you are caught in a drug charge, felony charge, you cannot work at a place that sells alcoholic beverages for 3 years. So that falls into, I think I'd mentioned something earlier about suitable and unsuitable employees. If you are in a 2 to 3 year window for those crimes, you cannot work serving or selling alcoholic beverages. First offense, you'll be fined $250 with a 25-hour community service penalty for a first offense. Second offense, it goes up to 550 hours. $500 and 50 hours. And of course, all of that, generally speaking, is kind of at the judge's discretion, but these are what the laws are say as far as penalties go. Depending on how that alcoholic beverage is transferred, sold, or given, you could possibly suffer a 1-year revocation of your driver's license. If you sell to an underage or intoxicated person and injury or death results, you could be sued up to $500,000 in the state criminal judicial system, but when it comes to civil suits, it's an unlimited amount. So just something to keep in mind. There's some heavy penalties that go with this. I always tell people, you have to remember, if you're going to say it is what it is, you have to remember that alcohol is a legalized drug. So, with that comes great responsibility.
Can you talk to what happens to the permit of some establishment?
Sure.
That does that?
With any of those things that happen, like I said, we will submit a report to the ABC Commission, and they'll review it and they make that decision. They can do anything all the way from a written warning to a revocation of your permit. Usually it's somewhere in the middle, again, unless it's continuing ongoing problems or if it's egregious acts of repeated violence or drug dealing, some heavy stuff, but it has to be pretty serious for them to actually revoke somebody's permit, but they do it. We've had one revocation. We usually, in the Asheville area, we actually do pretty well out here. People run pretty decent businesses, and we usually end up with about 1 revocation a year, which I'm pretty happy with. That means y'all are doing a good job. Mm-hmm. Usually, your first offense will be $500, depending on what it is. I know for underage and intoxicated offenses, they start out a little bit higher, and you can be fined up to $5,000 for each offense. And usually with those fines, there's also an offer in compromise, it's called. So you could end up with a $500 fine and a 5-day suspension, or if you don't want to pay the fine, you could just suffer a 10-day suspension. So it's kind of all over the place, and all of that is very much at their discretion. I don't think there's anything outlining exactly how they handle things. I think there's some guidelines written in the law, but it's totally at the ABC Commission's legal department's discretion.
I have a question.
Yeah.
When it comes to an outdoor event, you have wristband sellers and then you have beer sellers. If let's say the wristband seller sells a wristband to someone who's underage, and then they get a beer from the beer sellers who gave them a beer because they're wearing a wristband, who is the responsible party there?
Yep, we're going to get into that in a minute. I actually added it to this presentation just for you all.
Just for
Yeah, really, because I mean, that's how you guys work, so.
Yeah, I have a question before you move on.
Yeah.
You said they couldn't work in a place for 2 years. As an employer, how would we know if they have
Criminal
lost that
back
here and come down to get a job there?
You can do a criminal background check on everybody. You can go to the clerk of court's office and request a background check on
Are
anybody.
we responsible to do a criminal background check on everybody that
Well,
has alcohol?
I mean, I can't say, again, there's no law saying that you have to.
Is there a penalty if you hire them without doing one and they're, you find
we
them
could
working
send in a
there?
report saying that you've hired an unsuitable employee, but then it's up to the ABC Commission what they do with that. It's not anything I would criminally charge anybody with.
We just made that part of our standard hiring process. We get a criminal background check on everybody because we deal with children. So, it's just part of the process we go through in our hiring.
What's the cost of a criminal background?
$25.
Okay, so it's not outrageous.
No.
Is that a federal check though? Because from
They're-
a prior
they're-
life, I remember some of these things, you
Yeah,
essentially have to go to every state, but not every county, to
It's
really
true.
do a good
No, we
background
go
check.
through, I think this is North Carolina.
Yeah, if you go to the clerk's office, it's going to be North Carolina. Now, I think there's independent firms that you can hire, and they'll handle it.
But I think that
broad
is a
spectrum.
very good baseline for what you're doing, and I
Shows
think,
you're trying to do.
yeah, I mean, that says, that you've made an effort.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are there any standardization programs that an individual, a bartender, or somebody doing wristbands can be, quote, certified? Or
Oh, yeah.
Again, there's no requirement for the state of North Carolina.
But
a lot
I mean,
of-
if an individual want to be proactive,
Yeah.
be marketable, I think very similar to what this lady in front is talking about. It's how do you qualify credentials, for
I think I'm following what you're saying. So you're talking about training and employees.
You go out to Craigslist, you go out and say, I'm looking for an individual for this type function. There's
Yeah.
They must have
anybody.
these credentials.
Yeah.
They must pass a class where they understand the laws.
I mean,
it's,
passing a class per se.
Well, I think all the nonprofits send everybody who pours beer or has anything to do with it through this online test.
Yeah.
And we have a certification and a certificate at the event that says everybody who's serving beer or involved in the beer process has taken this class.
Yep.
So if we're asked, we can say, if you would come to us,
Yeah.
we would say, yeah, Joe Schmo over there, yeah, he took the class, here's his certification.
Yep, it's on the ABC
It's
Commission
pretty easy,
website.
and it's online, and
It is pretty easy.
and it protects them. I mean, people
It does.
who volunteers, you want to make sure that your volunteers are protected.
And
As
is
well
that,
as you.
is that required for selling wristbands and checking IDs?
I would recommend it highly. I
But it's
really
not-
would.
Right.
It's going to be up to the nonprofit that
Right.
you're working for, how they want to handle things. So much of it comes to policy, because in the state of North Carolina, there's no mandated certification for people that sell or serve alcoholic beverages, even though there is that mandate in other states. There's not here.
Okay, yeah, we require it too, I just wondered.
Yeah. Now the ABC Commission will do training also, so there's the brief online training. Our folks will come out and train, and the ABC Commission will, and I believe local ABC will do training also. So you have a lot of options. It's just a matter of being proactive and getting it scheduled. So we talked a little bit about empowering people, and one of those things that anybody that's serving alcohol has to understand is that you can refuse to sell alcohol to anyone, of course with the exceptions being the big ones: race, color, religion, sex, national origin, all those kind of things. So Usually what we're talking about when it comes to that is if you see something that you're concerned about, maybe they already appear impaired, maybe they look like they're too young, I mean, something. But you have that right to refuse, and you're covered by the law in that refusal, okay, as long as it's not discrimination. Handicap should be added in there also.
So if someone presented an ID that we weren't comfortable with, we'd still refuse?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah, I would use extreme caution. I mean, I think everybody in this room can attest to the fact that they were young once, and when you drank when you were underage, you didn't really have any thought about the person that you were trying to get that alcohol from and what possible consequence for them would be if something went wrong. You're more thinking about getting that beer for yourself. So just remember, we're all on the flip side of that now, and you have to do what you can to protect yourself. So the state guideline is if somebody wants to have a beer, glass of wine, mixed beverage, or whatever the case is, rule of thumb is if the person looks under 40, ask for ID. I believe the federal requirement on that is, there's a federal law, I believe. I looked it up once years ago, so I can't quote you on it, but I believe they say the federal government suggests 27. So basically, if somebody looks young, go ahead and check their ID.
We have a law that says if they look 27, what's a law say?
I know. How do you determine that? It beats me. I don't know.
I'm gonna wrinkle. For a person that's clearly over 40, that may not necessarily be carrying an ID with them. What's the rule of thumb with that?
The rule of thumb is to go to your boss and see what their requirement is, because we have no requirement for it. I mean,
so you don't require that everyone drinking has an ID?
Not in the state of North Carolina. I believe it's a law in Tennessee, but it's not here.
That's across the board, even if it's a brewery, a bar, a restaurant,
Anybody,
everything.
yes. But you really have to defer to the policies of who you're working for.
Right.
I'll give you an example. When we do our River Music concert it was last summer, I believe, the mayor showed up. And she said, I didn't even bring my wallet, can you get me a wristband? So the server came over, I okayed, she got a wristband. I know the mayor's over 21. And
I didn't know that.
You didn't? I did. I know her children, I know her graduated from law school. So, that sort of came to us, we okayed it. And I think we bought her a beer.
There you go.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
What's the policy with expired IDs?
They're not valid. Yeah.
So
Not even North Carolina ones, because we've heard a couple things on this where North Carolina ones are valid if they're expired, but out of state is not.
Any of them that are expired are not valid.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't
using
matter.
Google facial recognition wouldn't be acceptable.
Well, there is some provision for biometric identification. Maybe, I don't know.
They can just scan it.
You'd have to leave that to a jury. I don't know. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do the guessing game here just to kind of get you in the groove here. And so it's up to you to determine how old this young man looks.
Under 21.
17.
18.
Y'all are pretty good. 16. And how about this young lady?
14.
14. 17. So we're doing good so far. I've noticed that the older I get, the harder time I have telling how old young people are.
18, 19.
All right, so we would check her ID.
24.
Everybody agrees. She's 32.
Starting to see the forehead lines.
Yeah.
That's stress.
That's because she worked for us. And this young man. 22. 15.
Wow.
Whoa.
Yeah. Check everybody. And how about this young lady?
18.
Everybody's all over the place, but it's that hairdo, I think. So she's 16. And this is our last finalist.
18.
14.
Oh, somebody called it 14.
Wow.
She's probably this PowerPoint that I revised at least to get it up to date. She's probably 28 by now. All right, so we're going to talk about acceptable forms of ID, which you all touched on. The thing I want to explain about this is that this law that tells you what the acceptable forms of ID are, it's not an offense that if you check somebody's ID or you don't, and basically I can't charge you criminally for it. I'm getting tripped up on my words here. But this law is put in place to protect you, not to hurt you, okay? It's one of those laws that's on the books, but it's not a criminal charge. It's a law that's here to help you, the people who are selling and serving alcohol. And what that law says is that if you accept a driver's license from any state or the U.S. territories, you might see some of those, you know, Guam, Puerto Rico, U.S. Virgin Islands, they're acceptable also. You might want to make sure you know what the islands are. So driver's license from any state in the United States, North Carolina special ID card, which is the card that is given out by the Department of Motor Vehicles that just says no driving, passport or military ID card. Those are the 4 ones that they say if you see one of those types of identification and they looked good to you and you truly believed in your heart of hearts, if something were to go horribly wrong, you end up in a trial, then this is your protection. I checked this. This is what they had. Now with that, you can see that they break it down. The North Carolina licenses have 3 colors around the photo, also a horizontal and vertical format. If they have the green on the edge, that means that they're over 21. If they have yellow, they are somewhere between 18 and 21. And if it's red, that means they were under 18 when it's issued. Now, there is no requirement for a person that is under those ages to get their license replaced when they hit that age. So they can carry their red license until they're well over 21 because the renewal on the driver's licenses just keeps getting pushed further and further out. So those are good guidelines, but it's just a guideline. So make sure that you look at it carefully.
2 questions. One, what about, say, if there's an ID card from another state?
Yep, and I was just going to get into that.
Okay.
So ID cards from another state are not acceptable, and they won't protect you if something goes wrong. Now, with that said, I would like to go ahead and talk about a recent email I received about a nice guy from New York City who came down here on vacation and really wanted to enjoy the craft beer scene, which who wouldn't want to? Contrary to the rumors in the newspaper, I like craft beer. So Mr. Joe was his name. Mr. Joe Trupiano came down and he wanted to have some beer. And he was at one of the local establishments. He's 38 years old, had his family with him, having a little dinner and would like a beer with his dinner. And Joe has the misfortune of being legally blind. So he doesn't have a driver's license from New York State. He only has their identification card. And this is kind of the reason I want to spend so much time making sure you understand that there's a difference between a law that can be charged and one that's in place to protect you. So he was refused sale because he didn't have an ID, even though he was visibly old enough. So the one thing I want to make sure everybody understands is no different than what you were saying earlier, is everybody that is part of a group that's selling alcohol, whether it be a business or a nonprofit, needs to have a plan in place so that if a situation like that occurs, if you want to make sure that your staff, because a lot of businesses will require that they have one of these before they'll let them drink in their establishment. But I very strongly advise the management of any group to have a plan in place so that if there's a circumstance that's a little bit unusual, that they're flexible and that you can go to a manager and say, hey manager, here's what's going on. I would like to defer to you and let them make the decision. Because I mean, that's horrible that he came down here and was refused sale for something that he was really excited about. And it was only one business, but still. I actually took the opportunity, met with one of our legislators last week to see about getting this law revised a little bit to start accepting those non-driver IDs from the states.
Basically, you're saying that that sale in that particular circumstance, because they could pretty much verify he was 38, it was a legal sale that they refused because they were not covered under this particular rule interpretation.
Yes.
So they had no legal coverage, but they could have sold legally.
Yes.
That's all it is.
Absolutely.
It was really their policy. That
It was their policy. And who knows if it's something they read or just because a lot of times word gets around between businesses and people hear something from somebody and they think it's the truth and they just roll with it. And so a lot of folks I'm finding really believe that they have to accept these and this is all they can accept, but that's not.
Well, they hear that, basically they hear out of state
Yeah, out of trade.
Identification cards are no good. That's what they hear, so we can't sell. Well, you can sell, but you have no protection under law.
Right, right. Now, if somebody were very young and was trying to pass something off like that, I'd be concerned. Very concerned.
That's a big yellow.
Yeah, that's a big yellow. Maybe even a red, depending on how young they look.
Just one more question is, what about when somebody is getting, like, let's say they've lost their ID, they're getting it replaced. Quite often they're mailed kind of a temporary.
Yes. That was not acceptable, and there's a brand new driver's license that's coming out. And with that brand new driver's license, there's actually a brand new temporary driver's license that's coming out that actually has all the pictures and everything right on it.
Yeah.
And basically the DMV is saying that you can use that. But it has the picture. I have another PowerPoint from the DMV. I took some of their pictures of the new licenses so that y'all would see them. But I'll be happy afterwards to bring up that temporary so you can see it.
But is that acceptable?
The new one, but anything old, not.
Right.
So
You'll
see it. You'll know it when you see it.
I got my license renewed on my birthday last week, and I have a card. My license is expired.
Yeah.
But I have a card.
Do you have it with you?
No, actually, it's not.
Did it have your picture and everything on it? Okay, so that won't work.
So that is not a valid. I now don't have a valid ID.
Correct. Correct. And I would card you. I probably wouldn't let you drink. All right, so as I just discussed, here's the brand new North Carolina driver's license. You will probably be getting one of these, but I'm not positive. They started doing issuance. So they started issuing these on the east side of the state so far. I've talked to one person out here who has seen one. I actually saw one.
I've seen one.
Okay, great. So they are out here now. It's just been a slow trickle. So this is the new driver's license. It's very flexible. You can see the one on the right. They're still doing the horizontal and vertical format, which I'm guessing most of you are familiar with. Of course, if it's horizontal, you're over the age of 21. If it's vertical, you're not. So they kind of got rid of the red, yellow, green system, stoplight system. But you can see under the one on the far right that they still have the strip. So that strip under that young man's face is going to give you the date of birth that he is actually going to turn 21 on. Or I mean, 8, yeah, and yellow will be 21 and red will be 18. So make sure I made that clear. Red tells you when they'll turn 18, yellow tells you when they'll turn 21. So there's a whole lot of neat security features in these. If you're checking IDs, they're a little bit harder to counterfeit, especially if you know you've got, I believe it's the date of birth at the bottom. It's actually raised, so you can actually feel it. The pictures, well, if you hold it up, it actually looks like somebody took a bunch of little holes and there's an outline of North Carolina, so when you hold it up to the light comes through with that little outline, that silhouette. The two pictures, one I think you can only see mostly if you tip it to one side. You can see the bottom side, that NC with the state. That's what I'm talking about. When you hold that up to the light, you can see right through it.
So what you're saying is any one of these new format horizontal licenses, you're over 21?
Yes, you're over 21.
Oh, you have to look for red, yellow, green, or something.
Yep. Now, of course, just because somebody possesses that does not mean they're necessarily 21. So make sure you take pause to look at the picture and who's handing it to you. I can't tell you how many IDs I've seized over the years from college kids predominantly who go into the bars and pass off their sorority sister, frat brother's ID so they can get drink. So just make sure, the side somebody usually parks their hair on, people get very attached to that. The space between the tip of your nose and your lips and your eyebrow line don't typically change much, face shape. So just kind of take pause and look at those. The thing I really want to stress is when you're looking at an ID, make sure you take your time. Don't get rushed. I don't care if there's 12 people backing out the door. Take your time. If you're horrible at math, make sure you have a calculator there to do the calculations. And so, as we talked about acceptable forms of ID. This is, I'll just go ahead and say, yes, that's acceptable. This is the current military ID that's being issued. There are still some of the older ones. It's like a paper kind of looking thing, and depending on if they're dependent or actual military member, it has a different colored background. Some are orange, some are green, I think some are
Where's
blue.
the date of birth?
They're on the back of those.
Why is the picture so blurry?
Because we
I'm
didn't
not
want
sure
to
I'd
sell out
recognize
Mr. Army.
So
It was probably, yeah.
It's a security thing for the.
Well,
No, it's not
it'll be
real life.
okay
They-
if somebody
they did
hands you
that.
one. We blurred it out.
Oh, okay.
My guess would be that that's something that we seized from somebody who shouldn't have had it, and we decided to use it in the
okay.
presentation, so we didn't want a name and face getting out
I'm
there.
sorry, I thought this was an official
Yeah.
one.
Yeah,
He was
no.
really drunk when they took the picture.
How much have you had to drink? Okay, so there's your military ID, and then it's, like I said, there's some other ones still out there, but eventually they're going to phase those out, and this is what everybody will have, including retirees and children of military members. Everybody's issued one if you have somebody in the military. So here we have a University of South Carolina Columbia ID. Do you think this looks like a good answer? Good answer. Some of the college IDs actually do have a date of birth on them, so just so you know, it's not acceptable. California identification card. What do you think about that? No, absolutely not. Looks like driver's license, then yes. And I talked about this before. I'll put it in there just as a reminder in case we didn't get to it already. Identification card, again, like the situation I talked to. Have a plan in place to defer to your management if you are uncertain about something. And passport,
Yes.
acceptable, absolutely.
Passports from another country also?
Yes. Yes.
And passport card, same thing?
And that's something new, yeah. And we've started to run into that. And at last check, they were saying be very careful with that. So I don't
I mean,
have
they're
anything
just
more than that.
basically used for land crossings and, being on a ship, I guess, maybe? Not
Yeah,
air travel.
They're limited circumstance.
Yeah, they're not valid for air travel.
Right, so.
Internationally.
You sound like you know more than I do about it, so
Well, I
thank
haven't.
you. Yeah,
Probably easier to
Is it
California.
just a card with the relevant
I would
information on
imagine.
it?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's not a passport, it's a passport card. It's cheaper. It's
Yeah.
like $30 instead of $100.
And so if you
Expiration.
if you don't have a passport, if you ever get your hands on one, and especially if it's from a foreign country, you're going to plan on spending a little time fishing around on that thing, finding their date of birth. So just again,
So is
take your
the
time.
passport card, is that acceptable or is that not?
I would not.
Okay.
Most anybody that's here, is going to have some other form of ID, or they'll have their actual passport if they've come in from a foreign country. So yeah, that's correct. This is a no. So you cannot accept a driver's license, consulate card, anything else of the like from a foreign country.
If they're here, they should have a passport.
They should have a passport
And a driver's license.
and a driver's license, or a driver's license. Okay, so we talked about checking IDs, and the one thing I can't stress enough is, especially if you're uncertain, make sure we have them take that identification card, if it's an ID, or their driver's license out of their wallet. Because you get that wallet window where it's all scratched up, you can't really see what's going on with it. And a lot of times, when an identification card has been altered, it'll be really thick. I've seen them, printed out on a high-quality printer and then glued to a Walmart card. Just all kinds of things. But if you'd taken it out, you would have looked at it, you would have known right away something was amiss. So we tell you to pause, take a look at the photo, make sure it matches the person. Age, compute the age. Are they underage? Seal, check for the seal or hologram. Every driver's license that's issued in the United States has a hologram of some description in it. One of the things and it's phasing out, you don't see it as much now, but for years I was able to tell everybody, if you start looking at an ID or driver's license and it has a key symbol or it says genuine, valid, secure, if that's what the hologram says, that means it's 100% fake. Okay, so if you see anything like that, just say no thanks. Now we're actually, the things we see the most now, they come from overseas. Most of them are South Carolina driver's licenses. They're actually pretty darn good. The biggest tip-off to them is the photograph. If you look at the photograph, it really looks like their head has been photoshopped into a blue background. Whereas if they have a real one, they were standing in front of a background. So, but, I mean, they're good. They're really good. So just, you know, you use your best caution. We can't expect you to be a professional on everything.
Well, so that was kind of, since these laws are supposedly to protect those of us looking at
Yeah.
these, if somebody has a really good fake and you didn't catch it,
Yeah, well, and
what's the implication to you?
because I see them so much, I know that. But, you know, if something were to come up and if you were to end up in court over it, which if it's that good, you're probably not. But if it were to happen, you just have to think of it like this. It's going to be put before a jury. And if 12 members of that jury look at it and can't tell the difference, you know. So, I mean, they're good. I'm telling you, they're good.
Oh, I believe it.
Yeah.
On the other end of the spectrum, what about heavily damaged IDs?
Be very
We get
careful with
quite
those.
a lot of those, where
Yeah, I bet
a
you
lot of
do.
it where it's been in someone's wallet, rubbed out, you know, you can barely see the face.
It-
together.
Yeah,
together.
you'll
Yeah.
find a lot of times it's very strategic damage. So, again, kind of a myth that goes around is that you cannot accept a cracked driver's license or anything like that. It's not true. It's always a case of use your best judgment. If you can't see their face, or if the date of birth is cracked off, or if the strategic sanding and scraping against a road surface or something has happened so it's in those areas and you can't read them, I wouldn't accept them. So that's just one of the most common tricks that they use when they're going to alter their ID. They used to go to a lot of trouble to scratch off that date of birth and put a new one on there. Not so much. Usually now it's just strategic sanding. So be on your guard. Be on your guard. Okay, so when you're checking an ID, make sure you look at the date of birth on the ID. If it is after the current date and the year on the calendar, the person is not old enough to buy alcohol. So my question is, what year was someone born to be 21 years of age today?
94.
Sweet. So that's what you need to know. Okay, so if you always know that year and you know what today's date is, you'll be fine. So, you know, if you're selling lottery or tobacco products, you have to know the sale that would make them 18. But for our situation here today, 1994. So for all this year, it's 1994. So if somebody's born on today's date, 1994, they're 21 years of age right now. Or if they were born before today. Tomorrow, not so much. So just make sure everybody knows that year, and common sense should kick in. But I would still have a calendar. Calendar, if you can get one. And I apologize, we have had such budget cuts over the years. We used to hand out those calendars. We just can't afford to do it anymore. We can barely keep our people employed. So if you have a calendar or a calculator, I encourage you to have those available for your staff. So from there, we'll go ahead and move on. We'll talk a little bit about intoxicated patrons. And this is where I was talking about some laws and some rules. So it's against the law to sell or give an alcoholic beverage to an intoxicated person. So that's the law. That's Chapter 18B. That can get you a ticket or technically in jail, any of those things. And again, I want to stress that we try not to take people to jail. We would just as soon write a ticket and go on. The other thing I want to myth I would like to kind of debunk is I know that there has been a lot of hubbub in the news as of late, but when we come into a business, and if you ever run into one of my agents that's not being anything other than polite and professional, number one, I want to know about it, because we pride ourselves on that. And the other thing we pride ourselves on is being discreet. We understand that you're business owners, that you're trying to do the right thing. We want your business to survive because your business is good for the community. It brings people together, it brings money into our economy. We want you to do well. So when we see a problem, we try to be discreet about it, and we try to take you off to the side and talk about things and deal with them out of the public eye, okay? So I just want you to understand that about us, and what the media has put out there lately is very disheartening to me. I really didn't appreciate the fact that they aired people's dirty laundry out there. I thought it was not cool.
A personal comment, this is my personal comment. When I see you with a weapon to the side, I'm intimidated. What and why?
Well, you have to understand, again, we're law enforcement officers, and I can't tell you how many times we've gone into a business where there's been a fight or drug deals or all kinds of things, and we have to take action. We deal with a lot of drugs. We also do traffic. So if somebody blows by me doing 90 miles an hour, they're going to get stopped, and they'll probably end up with a state citation. We are law enforcement agencies, my agency is, we have the complete jurisdiction to arrest and investigate any offense, all the way from the traffic ticket all the way up to a murder. So, I mean, I feel a lot of times like I'm naked by not wearing my bulletproof vest, especially knowing I could stop a car. I mean, on my way here, I do probably once a week end up stopping somebody because I drive an unmarked car. And there's some people that drive kind of crazy around here, but that's why.
There's a rule here about not using your blinkers.
It's an option in North Carolina. You only have to use your blinker by state law if it affects the drivers around you.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, and I do apologize if it makes you uncomfortable, because I know it does make a lot of folks uncomfortable, but I feel like I would be derelict of my duties if I was going around and saying I'm a police officer and I don't have a gun and badge on me. I'm here to protect and serve and help you out, and if I'm not fully equipped to do my job when I'm getting paid to do it, I think there's something wrong with that. So we talked about the law, now we're going to talk about the rules. So there's the rule violation. So it's against the law to sell or give alcohol to somebody who you know is intoxicated, but it is against the rules to allow an intoxicated person to continue to consume alcoholic beverages. So a good example of that would be somebody comes in and they seem fine, and you sell them a beer, or they get a sample and everything seems fine, and all of a sudden 5 minutes later they are trashed. And any of you that have worked in the business, I'm sure, have seen that, because you don't know if they've drank before or if maybe they have taken some pills, or, I mean, there's just no telling. And so things can turn rather quickly. So it's up to you and your staff to try to curtail somebody from continued consumption if you know they're impaired. Now, one of the things that we also like to let you know is we don't expect you to get in a fight with anybody. We don't expect you to make a big deal out of it. If you can peaceably get that beverage away from somebody, go ahead and do it. If you have concerns, then call the local law enforcement or somebody like that if things start to look like they're going to go awry. Again, we want you to protect yourselves. We don't expect you to go all crazy on somebody. I've heard some great tips from folks over the years, servers, about how they accomplish this when they see that something's going wrong, and because I think we all know that sometimes somebody that's intoxicated wants to fight. They're 10 foot tall and bulletproof. So they came up with some things that they tell me they do, such as if they're sitting at a table, they will go around to start cleaning things up and strategically knock it over. A lot of times they'll bring in a bunch of staff members, 4 or 5 people. It's almost like a mini intervention. Excuse me, sir, we need to take your alcoholic beverage away. But that will curtail some of the problems. Strength in numbers. The biggest thing, and I think this is covered in one of the other slides, is put it on us, if that helps. You can say that ALE has been at your business 3 times in the last month, and you have concerns, and if they could just do you the favor of working with you on this, we'd be happy to give you a Coke or a glass of water or whatever. And so work with them. Put it on us if you need to. Sometimes it's easy.
Is there any type of rule that says it's either not, it could be a possible rule violation for allowing an intoxicated person to remain on your premises? Not even serving, not even, but they should be removed?
We're not worried about that. No,
Okay.
Personally, I would rather, if they're being peaceful, I would rather see you keep them there and let that time pass by.
Usually what I'm saying, when the incident comes up, is they're either flailing around and they're, hitting people that so you actually have to restrain them.
Yes.
But then the choice is, well, do you restrain them and try to talk them down, or do you restrain them and eject them? And usually it's restrain and eject.
Yeah, you restrain, that usually happens because there's such a disruption. So,
And so on the verge of starting fights with somebody else. I mean, they're not being aggressive necessarily, but the person will be aggressive back to them, and then it will be a fight.
Yeah, they're stirring the pot.
Yeah, exactly. That's it.
Yeah. So, we suggest, especially if you end up having to eject them and you're not having them charged with disorderly conduct or anything of the like by whatever police entity is nearby you. We just basically say, hey, if they're going to leave, if you see them get into a car, go ahead and call local police. If you can get a vehicle description, direction of travel, if there's an officer nearby, a lot of times they can hook them up, because we all have, if we're not on the roads ourselves, we have family out on the roads, and we don't want anything to happen. So don't get hung up about telling on somebody, because it could be a life that you're saving.
And even if somebody is asked to leave, if they refuse to leave, then it's a trespass.
Then it's trespassing, absolutely.
Which is a criminal.
Yes.
So.
If you're in a festival type situation where it's a closed fest, there's DUI checkpoints on the way out, they've already checked all the IDs on the way in, and you're only serving a couple ounces of beer at each thing, it seems very difficult to, and let's be honest, at these beer festivals, everyone is intoxicated. I mean, they might not be flailing around, but they're happy drunks. And that's, I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that, as long as they're being responsible on the way home and the police are taking care of that on the way out. I don't really understand what's the purpose of, what would your job be in a situation like that, where it's protected for people coming in, it's protected people going out, and the whole purpose there is to get a buzz on and enjoy beer?
Well, getting a buzz on enjoying a beer, a lot of times, of course, when you consume alcoholic beverages, the first thing you lose is sound judgment. And so a lot of folks will start drinking and they don't really understand their limit, or they don't really care about their limit. And that's where our concerns come in, especially in Asheville. I have huge concerns. It's such a crowded downtown, such a high amount of foot traffic. There's so little parking that everybody has to walk every place basically once they procure a parking spot, which can really be a challenge. So it's public safety. We don't want anybody, whether they're on foot, we don't want them to walk in front of a car, nor do we want them to get behind the wheel of a car. And honestly, if I can stop somebody before they leave that festival and keep them from getting into a car, I feel like I've done my job.
But that's everybody at the festival.
Well, and that's part of what we're trying to, the mindset of the culture that I would like to make people aware of, that the liability that you're putting on yourself when you allow a person who's intoxicated to keep consuming is huge. I worked in Winston-Salem for years, and there was a TV anchorman that was there, and he had gone to like 4 or 5 different bars, and he'd actually started out at a work party, and he got very, very intoxicated. And even though I think there was 1 bar out of the 5 or 6 that refused to serve him because he was so intoxicated. Either way, when he left, he went ahead and he got in his car, drove down the road and ran over a pedestrian and killed him. In the wake of that, 5 of those businesses ended up closing because of the civil litigation that came up from the young man who died. It will ruin your life. So, I know that most everybody that has a business has put their heart and soul in that business, and they want that business to grow and be successful. But you have to understand the liability that comes with it. You just can't be too careful.
It sounds like you're anti-beer festival, though.
No, I'm not anti-beer festival. I'm
not allowed to get intoxicated.
Anti-over-consuming.
Intoxication.
I have a clarifying question about that. So let's say he's at a beer festival and he drinks, but he doesn't think he's drinking too much. And he gets in his car leaving, he gets pulled over at the DUI checkpoint, and he blows a .09.
He won't, because I'll be driving.
Okay, well, I'm just kidding. Is the festival then liable for the fact that they were driving while intoxicated?
If we're just talking about a DWI, there's been no physical injury or harm, then no.
Okay. So it's only when someone's been injured or there's been a death that it becomes a problem.
Death or serious injury, and usually, sometimes the criminal, but a lot of times the civil lawsuits, they can transpire from
the
this.
festival owner, the person in charge of the city beer festival who did not have a checkpoint that's having people blow, what sounds really.
Yeah, I understand.
The department, when they come out, they should have,
Yeah, if there's 50 breweries each serving 2 ounces each, you can't hold any one.
You can have the permit holder.
I wonder
it gets complicated, it really does. Because you have to remember, and here's something that's been going on during special one-time. So you have your special one-time permit. Now, before 5, maybe 6 years ago, special one-time permits, it was solely that nonprofit entity that had that permit, and they sold the alcohol, or they served the alcohol, they took in the donations, or sometimes they purchased the alcohol, but everything was the responsibility of that special one-time entity in that nonprofit group. Well, 5 or 6 years ago, in order to promote the craft beer industry, and even longer ago than that for the wine industry, the state came up, or legislators came up with this, for the beer, it's a malt beverage special event permit. And what that permit allows you to do, it allows you as a brewer to go to that special one-time festival, where normally they collect admission at the gate, and the brewers can just come in and promote their own products, do some public education with it, and they can serve their own products. But they have to have that malt beverage special event permit in order to do that. So things are starting to shift a little bit, and I'm sure there's a lot of folks don't even realize they have to have that. So that's part of what I'm trying to get out, make sure everybody knows, hey, you have to have this permit.
That's the festival organizer that has, so that's
No,
one
the
person,
beer.
and
Special-
that's every vendor.
Every
So
brewer or
Right.
winery.
Well,
Is it just
so
one
is that the
per
issue that-
brewery, or is
Yes.
it per person that is going representing
No,
that
the brewery, so
brewery?
annually they'll have a brewing permit.
Yes.
A lot of times they'll have a retail on-premise permit, and then they'll also get this special event permit. They pay
But
for
it
an
is
annual
per
renewal, and it
organization.
belongs to the brewery. We'll
Got
just use brewery as an example.
Is that what the festival down in the Oscar Blues thing, was that the problem, that
Yes.
the ones that were visiting didn't have the proper permit for that?
But
Right.
out-of-state brewers can get.
Out-of-state brewers can get that. Now, out-of-state brewers, when they come in, they have to have the malt beverage special event permit or winery special event, and they also have to have what's called a non-resident malt beverage vendor permit, and any alcohol that they have at that event has to be approved by the state of North Carolina, and it has to come through a licensed
So that
wholesaler.
essentially means and if you can't buy it at Ingles, you can't bring it in here to
Pretty
the
much.
festival.
I mean,
Which is the whole point of the festival, is to bring in beers that you can't buy at Ingles.
Right. Well, but you know what, with that though, there's tons of them that are approved that a lot of the bars can order and sell, but somebody's
I mean,
mainstream is the
simplifying
first.
what I'm
Yeah,
saying,
yeah,
but you
okay.
gotta already be distributing it here, and so a lot of
Yes.
these guys wanna come here to
Right.
sort of introduce beer where they don't.
It has to be
distribute.
available for
So you
distribution,
can't-
which is, it's not a
So
big
it's marketing
process.
going away.
It's not a big process, it really isn't. They just have to submit their paperwork and recipe.
Can we go over this one more
Oh, so
time?
no,
Because
wait,
it's a little, because it is important, I think, for all of us to know exactly if someone is out of state, what are they required? Like I have cider makers, so I guess
Yeah,
wine makers
wine.
or beverage.
Right, so they have to have a non-resident wine vendor permit, and they have to have a winery special event permit. They have to have those two permits, and their product has to be approved for sale in the state of North Carolina.
So
If they are gonna serve it and sell it themselves.
And they
Or
get
they can
that,
have volunteers.
they get that permit.
If the
just by
volunteers do it,
submitting.
they don't have to have those
See,
permits.
this
Oh,
is the
okay,
caveat.
okay.
And this is why I don't understand why Oscar Blues caved in, and I'm like, what on earth just happened here?
so if volunteers serve,
They don't
They
have to
don't
have
have
those
to.
permits.
even if we haven't,
No.
even if we haven't purchased their product.
Right, now your product, you still, you still have to get it through the proper chains. It can be donated, whatever. But yes, as long as that alcohol is for sale in the state of North Carolina now. If you wanted to try to serve somebody's product that's not approved in the state, I would defer to the ABC Commission and tell you to get their permission.
And that's without we're talking about label approval basically instead.
No, it's more than label approval, because I thought that too. And during the meeting a couple months ago with the ABC Commission, they said it's product approval, not label approval. I'm not sure what the
Recipe
difference
approval.
is.
What is
I mean, I
the
don't think it's an
difference?
exact. Well, for instance, would be like somebody was sent in their cannabis beer or something, and so they
Right.
rejected that one.
Oh.
So I know, right?
But you can have so product approval aside, so say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in, but it probably applies to cider as well. You've
Yes.
got a cider beer, etc., it's approved as a beer, but it does not necessarily have label approval in North Carolina, and it pops up at a beer festival and a volunteer is pouring it.
I would think that if they have product approval label, I would imagine it's all in the same paperwork, but I can't say that it's fact. I've never looked it up, really.
I have another question, and that is I have a distributor out of Rhode Island that is not currently selling his product from Spain here in our state. So with that being said, he cannot bring his product to the
In theory, no.
Because that's what he
But-
checked and said.
Yeah, I mean, again, I defer a lot of that stuff to the ABC Commission because the difference between the laws and the rules are the laws are made by our legislators, usually based on the request of the citizens or the public outcry, whatever. Either way, for some reason they put that law into effect. The ABC Commission nor I can say, oh, we're going to disregard that law for today. But their rules, the ABC Commission and their board designs those rules. If you ask for their permission, they can go ahead and change their rule or give you special exemption for any given situation.
And the next thing I have is home cider makers or home brewers.
Yeah.
Can they bring their product? Because I was going to have a home brewer's booth, and then someone told me they just worked on a festival and that you can't have them.
The only way that the law for making your own beer or wine says that you can manufacture pretty much as you like. I think there is a limitation on it somewhere. But it's, you can consume it yourself or you can give it away to your friends and family members. It might be a stretch for them to give it away to everybody at a festival and say they're their friends. Now the other issue that you run into is if you pay admission at the gate, that's considered, we'll say inside, all the samples are free, but there's been admission charged at the gate, so you have to pay money in order to get to that free beer.
Right.
That admission at the gate constitutes a sale, so if you have the home brewers in there, their alcohol has just been sold also, and they can't do it.
Okay.
Now, any of this stuff, I mean, if y'all group together and you want to get things changed, you have to go to your legislatures and the ABC Commission and work on that. I mean, I don't have any interest in pursuing any law that's not law.
Right.
And, you know, so, I mean, I fully advocate getting the laws and rules changed. It's a process, but they'll listen.
One more, sorry,
Sure.
question. As far as the cider makers that bottle their own product or the breweries, what permit do they have to be able to sell that product? Like, my understanding was that they had to have my permit, all of their permits, plus an additional permit to be able to sell.
Like at a festival?
But that it could not be opened on premise.
That malt beverage special event permit actually enables them to sell at a festival also. So if they want to sell beer to go, they absolutely can.
Okay.
My interpretation of that law is there's no problem with it. It's written right there in that law.
Okay. As long as we have our one-time special permit and they have that.
Yeah, so if somebody samples their beer and they want to sell it to go in a closed container, you can't sell it, you can't leave in an open
Right.
cup. But if it's the original manufacturer's closed container, I'm guessing a growler is the exception, but still it would be full, the seal would be technically unbroken, and full bottle, and that's fine from my interpretation of the laws.
Thank you.
So-
Blowing up.
Yeah, sorry. Just to make things even more difficult, spirituous liquor.
There's no provision in the law right now for sampling spirituous liquor with the exception of at the site of the distiller. So spirituous liquor, other than, you could sell spirituous liquor at a special one time with the permit if that's what you've asked for, but
They can also sample it if volunteers.
a distiller can't come in and set up a booth. You can't set up and give out samples of liquor. If it's part of the permit that you're giving out, you're serving mixed beverages, that's okay. But as far as just standing up and saying, I want to try a shot of this, I want to try a shot of that, you can't do it. I wouldn't be surprised if it changes, but that hasn't happened yet.
Okay,
I
and
have
that's
a question
all
about,
this.
I've listened to all these questions, and what kind of configurators or intelligent flow charts or something like that does AO or somebody have online to help people read their way through this to say, at the end, I need this, and this?
Well, I've sent out a billion emails.
Configurators.
I wish, the ABC Commission hasn't done it. I've got it nailed down pretty well, but no, as far, and that would be the ABC Commission's thing. That's something they should do. They're the permitting agency. And the thing that I've told everybody is if you have questions, I will answer as many as I can to try to keep you from having to call them because you're not going to hear back from them in a timely fashion. They are so busy. I can pre-screen probably about 80 to 90% of the questions. I know most of the answers, but there's things that I can't answer and that have to come directly from them. So I'm just trying to be helpful.
Well, thank
I'm
you.
getting beaten down for it, but I'm really trying. I'm not
Oh,
giving
no.
up.
Okay. So just this first part, it is against the law, right? So I am just thinking that that word intoxicated to be visually
Yes.
visually intoxicated,
Yes.
because you go to a bar, you get a little bit tipsy, but, or somebody is doing something, you can't tell they're drunk.
Exactly.
They're just, that is
And we'll
probably
get
not-
into that in
Okay.
next slide coming up. And you had something.
Yeah, I
Dave, so
did.
finish it.
I was just going to take it back to kind of homebrewers scenario. What about like an event like, say, you know, I know there's several homebrew competitions that occur in
Mhm.
town. Like, there is no admission
Right.
charged
Right.
for participation in it, but what's the general policy when it comes to that? Because it is homebrew coming into an establishment.
Right.
Like it's going away.
It means
And-
that we're all friends and family in Nashville.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
I bet you won't see
A
that
family
festival
with a
again.
club, you know, but it is, you know, it's a, what is it, NJBC?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I received a call on that last week. And basically, it never hurts to check with the ABC Commission. But, you know, like anything, there's a lot of things that just really aren't in public interest. So when it comes to a small group coming in and they're having a competition and you have judges and it's a closed event and you're not charging admission and it's just not going to be a free-flowing group of people coming in and out, I'm not going to pursue it. I mean, these guys, they're doing their thing. I respect that.
But it cannot be incorporated into a larger event that does have a
That has especially that has an admission,
Got it.
right?
Yeah, the biggest thing, I mean, seen as, I'm just trying to break it down, but the biggest thing is you're crossing over into charging admission at some point, somewhere, somehow, some way, or selling
Yeah.
somehow, some way, versus sampling without admissions, without paying.
Right.
I mean, there's a great difference in the law how it treats those
Yes,
two.
absolutely.
Thank you for answering all our questions.
Yes.
Yeah, no problem.
One of the things that we do with this intoxicated thing, and we're very blessed in that we have a lot of the same people who serve beer at our events, you know, so we've got a long-term, one of them's right there next, is that, you know, Max will come to me and say, we've served this guy 6 beers in the last hour. And then we make a determination, do we want to serve him anymore, or we tell him he's cut off?
Yes.
You know, and that, you know, it's just consumption in a small period of time. He may not be doing something wild, but, you know, we watch them then. I mean, we don't mind telling people, you know, we love having you here, and we're gonna give you a ride home.
Yeah, and I've actually had several people throughout my career that have actually said they've cut somebody off like that, and they've come back the next day and thanked them.
We've had people thank us, actually.
You know,
Yeah.
it's a mixed bag, but
Yeah.
so, which leads us right into signs of intoxication. So, like was just mentioned, it's visual. You know, obviously you all aren't going to carry around a portable breath test to check people, and sometimes, you know, you can't tell. If somebody's really good at drinking, you cannot really tell when they're intoxicated.
Can we talk about that for a second?
Sure.
About that, there are portable breath tester things out there. At our festival, we made a determination not to do that.
Sure. Yeah, I don't
because
blame you.
of liability.
Yeah.
Okay, so is that a?
Well, and it would be with the amount of people that come. I mean, I don't know how you keep up on it anyways.
But I mean, you can offer it as a, if you want to check yourself on the way out, knock yourself out. But we decided not to do that. And is anybody? I'm just kind of asking the group. Is anybody doing that at all?
You know, what you run into there is the alcohol that's in your system, that's in your stomach. You could have just slammed a beer and you'll blow a .07, and by the time you get out to your car, you could be, especially with the high gravity, you could be 9, 10, 11, 12. So, I mean, it's a good tool, but it's not an indicator.
And I thought of doing it as and I wondered if you would just provide that kind of thing, if we wanted to offer it as a service to somebody, you know, if they really want to make a determination, say they haven't had a beer in 20 minutes, you know, check it, and we'll have we had a relationship with Uber last year to get rides for people who, you know, from Oktoberfest.
Sure.
It would be a really nice thing for us to be able to offer to people. For those, my main concern, knowing what some people are, is could be a contest to see if we have the highest rating.
I think that happens.
But aside from that, I mean, I think I've raised the possibility. I know they used to have one mounted on the wall at Pisgah Brewing, which rarely worked, but they. I don't
Once
know
they
why.
get drunk, then they're good.
But it would be something, and it seems like it would be something useful. I mean, your agency was providing or lending us one so we could offer
Yeah.
that.
Well, the number one, they're expensive. Number two,
We won't break it, we'll give it
well,
back.
but let me explain the statement I just made about once they're drunk. When I said that, I didn't mean the people, I meant the machine. So basically, between testing folks, they have to have a little bit of downtime. Every time you test somebody, that machine will do a test sampling of the air to make sure the air quality is clean. Exactly, calibration, and then you go from there. Now, as far as having the ability to stand there, I mean, like I said, I've got seven agents covering 16 counties, so it would be kind of tough for us to try to man a station that could give an Elka sensor to everybody that comes out of a festival. What I can say is I went to Sam's Club the other day and they sell those darn things to plug right into the top of your phone. They weren't even that expensive now. I don't know how accurate they are, but
that's what we were worried about, is that if we offered it at the festival and they were okay, and then they go out and they get stopped,
yeah,
and they weren't okay.
Or they weren't okay, and
We told them they were, and then all of a sudden they're looking at us for lawyers' fees.
what are you gonna do what are you gonna do if they're over?
Right.
Yeah.
You've taken some responsibility.
yeah, and it's true. I mean, it's kind of a no-win. I mean, you just have to do your best to do the right thing and protect yourselves. And statistically speaking, the problems that result in the amount of investigations we end up working on due to over-serving, serious injury, death, liability suits like that, they're pretty small. They really are. A lot of folks just don't pursue them, or we don't hear about them, or who knows what. I mean, things get investigated, but if you were going to calculate how many people are out drinking on any given night versus how many accidents happen like that, it's really small. But just protect yourself.
Another thing we do is we hire a local police officer from Triumph PD, and we ask them to wear casual clothes, not the big bulletproof vest and everything to be very intimidating, but that way we've got eyes on, and they can see we're trying to be responsible about things, and we're trying to, be proactive.
That's what
So
I was
that
gonna
has
ask.
if that's required.
Or if it's a myth, because I've been told that an cop off duty can't function in that responsibility.
They're not off duty.
So
We're paid
They're
to
paid.
be on duty.
Yeah,
and
it's-
they're in just their casual
right, but
uniform
you're
rather
paying
than
them as a
their
business owner. You're paying them.
as a nonprofit, right?
So yeah, I've heard it both ways. So
What's your?
really is,
Could you
so
give me the question
I
specifically?
manage a bar late night,
Mhm.
so from 10 to or 11 to 2 a.m. It'd be nice to have an
Sure.
officer
Somebody working
there to
that.
assist
Mhm.
late night. But I've been told both ways that it's illegal or that can't happen. It's offensive, of his job requirements, but I'm willing to pay.
It's each
bouncer.
police agency's discretion.
Yeah.
So some cities that I've worked in will allow their officers to work off-duty pay jobs. They just have to coordinate through the police department so they know they're out and all that. And others say, no, absolutely not. They feel the liability is too high.
That's what we use.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's no laws being broken. A lot of times if the businesses do hire them, they basically explain to that officer for the night, this is what I expect. I expect you to stay outside. I expect you to handle things on the exterior if I call you in. But it's all a matter of what you want to do.
Right, but it's not necessarily illegal. It's just discretionary.
No,
based
yeah, it's
on-
discretionary. Yeah.
We definitely do it in Triumph, every festival, and they let us do it. And I've done it in other places where we went to the local police department, and you hire the person, but they're on duty. It's not when they're normally working, but they're still a police officer.
Yeah, if you're subcontract, they still have their full arrest powers, and it's just basically you're paying them, and you're paying for their disability, this, that, and the other thing through that contract, so that the police department isn't. But
We hire like 6 policemen for every river music. They're off duty, but they're in their uniforms. They are.
Isn't that required for special events, right?
Well, again,
Is
it's
it?
department policy.
I think
At
according
least
to
through
the
the
city,
city.
to get the permitting for the event through the city, you must have X amount of on-duty cops versus the amount of people you intend to have in your footprint. So it's required in Asheville.
We personally don't work those.
In the
It's
city
against their policy.
limits, it's required, right?
Yeah.
Is my.
Yeah. So your signs of intoxication, it does go back to visual signs. We don't expect you to be a psychic and know exactly what somebody's feeling inside. But so you're going to look for your basic, your basic usual intoxicated behavior, which I feel pretty certain everybody in here has witnessed at least once in their lives. So swaying, staggering, stumbling or bumping into things, leaning on objects for support, glassy eyes, slurred speech, annoying other customers, difficulty handling money, overlooking ID in the wallet, and also somebody mentioned earlier, consider the amount of alcohol consumed. So if somebody my size were to drink 8 beers in an hour, you probably are going to have a problem. You know, you get some great big 6'4", 300-pound guy, he's probably going to be okay. So, you know, again, if you see somebody that's grossly impaired where anybody can look at them and say, whoa, they're drunk, then that's when you need to exercise your caution. You know, and some folks display more indicators than others. But if you're seeing those signs and if they're obviously intoxicated, then it's probably time for you to make sure that your staff knows and they're not going to sell anything else to them. And you know, if you can do it peacefully, to try to somehow get that alcohol away from them. I mean, I've been places where somebody has been so intoxicated that they can barely stand, and they're still slamming them back, and the bar staff is cheering them on. So it's just social responsibility. That guy's going to leave and go someplace. So
this is just a dirty rumor, probably. This is something that I heard at the festivals, that agents were coming in and breathalyzing some of the people that worked. So they weren't visually impaired that I heard. You know, I wasn't there. So it's just.
And we'll get into that in a little bit, but
did
it's
that
true.
happen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it did.
Was wondering.
Yep. So be aware of the signs of intoxication. If somebody's consumed a gross amount of alcohol, be careful with that. And just understand that one of the myths that gets spread around among business owners a lot of times is that it doesn't matter how much he's drinking, he lives across the street and he's walking home, or I've got him a cab. It's irrelevant, because one of the first cases I worked many years ago when I came on with ALE, I was down in Hickory, and a guy had become very intoxicated, also consuming after hours at a bar, and they decided, well, they were having a good time and laughing because he was so drunk, and they poured him into a cab and sent him home. Well, as soon as he got home, he got in his other car and drove into a mom and her 7-year-old son on his first day of first grade and killed him, and mom has been physically altered forever because of it. And it was a pretty hefty lawsuit. It did end up going to a civil suit. So just keep in mind that you know, you need to do what you have to do. Keep an eye on things, do the best you can, but just understand that if they're on foot or if they're put in a taxi, that doesn't stop the problem. That doesn't allow you to keep serving them, I guess I should say.
So what, do you imprison them in your bar until they're sober? I mean,
Well, that's what I'm saying. You know, if you can keep them there and get them sobered up. I mean, it hits the point where you don't really have a choice, but you don't want to facilitate it, and you don't want to keep serving them once you see that. That's the point I'm getting at. So for them to keep serving him and say, it doesn't matter, he's walking tonight, you know, just understand that doesn't absolve you from that liability. Do your best to protect yourself and everybody else out here. We have a couple situational things. We'll just kind of breeze through these because we've been going at it a long time now. Patron tries to buy a drink and you suspect she's the ID has been altered. What do you say and do? Just try to, you can refuse the sale. Again, you have the right to refuse the sale to anybody. You can take that ID from them, you can seize it if you feel the need or if you want to. You're protected if you do that. You just have to turn it over to a law enforcement official within a reasonable amount of time. Again, if somebody's going to argue with you or fight with you about it, give it back to them. Let them go out the door. You know, don't put yourself in harm's way. Person ordering a beer shows signs of intoxication. What do you say and do? We'll just think about those, and it gives some pointers here a little bit, I think. You're bartending and notice that a patron has had several drinks in a relatively short period of time, less than 2 hours. She orders another drink. What do you say and do? They come to a counter with university photo ID.
Yeah.
We talked about that. Refuse the sale. 2 drinks, one for himself and his partner. He's over 21. His partner looks like she's under 30. What do you say and do? Again, if you doubt, hey, I need to see her ID. Order mixed drink, university ID, that was already, I think I hit the wrong button. Okay, so refusing a sale. If you have a beverage that's sitting on a countertop, just go ahead and pull it back before you refuse that sale. I've actually heard multiple times how a clerk has tried to refuse the sale and somebody picks that stuff up and throws it at the clerk. We don't want that to happen, so just be proactive and pull it away from them. I've also heard where they've grabbed it and ran out the door with it, so bring it back out of their reach. State in a calm and business-like manner that you can't sell them alcohol. Challenged, like I mentioned earlier, tell them that we monitor your business or your store. Let them know that you could lose your job or go to jail if you sell it to them. You know, most people will listen to you if you say something that makes sense. You just served a wine to a person over 21. As you watch him, you notice the person sharing the wine with another young person who appears to be under 25. What do you say and do? So check their ID, and of course if they're consuming, then it's up to you how you want to handle that. Just take it away, ask them both to leave. I mean, discretion. Some of this is so basically, if you're a business, you can get some of your policies in order, and during training, your inside training, you can talk to your staff about how you want to handle those situations. This is somebody who wants to argue with you about not having an ID, and what do you do when somebody begins to get angry? I said, don't put yourself in harm's way. Just try to be peaceful. Call the police if you need to.
Always blame it on the ALE.
Yeah, blame it on me. Everybody does.
I'm always like, look, I don't want to fight with the ALE. If you want to go fight with the ALE, you go ahead.
There you go. There you go. And so again, make sure everybody knows the policies. Just be professional, be calm, be very clear and concise with your words as best you can if you're stressing out. Try not to argue with anybody. Step away from the counter. Call your manager if you have other employees. Again, strengthen numbers and call the police if you feel threatened. So we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of some happy hour rules, which in the great state of North Carolina, there is technically no alcohol happy hour. And the reasoning that they devised these rules was just to try to stop a couple of things, try to stop alcohol from being handed from an overage person to an underage, and again, so you can monitor the impairment level of your patrons. So these rules basically state that you can't sell more than one drink to a patron for a single price. So you can't do a buy one get one free. You can't buy two for $3.50. You can't deliver more than one drink at a time to a patron for his consumption. So if somebody comes up and says, "I would like to buy 5 beers, please," you can't do it. Now, there's the letter of the laws and rules and the spirit of the laws and rules. So if you knew that that person was with a group of 5 people and you already checked their IDs and you have a clear visual of where he's going with those beverages and you feel very certain that that's where he's going, we're not going to hammer you on it. You know, when we look into things, it's common sense. Normally when we see that happening and it's a problem, they go off into the crowd and they give it to somebody who shouldn't be, or they are buying it for somebody who has already been refused sale because of their intoxication level. So just understand that it's not a, "oh, we got you" thing, but there's a reason for it to be in place, and again, it's to protect you, believe it or not. If you sell pitchers of beer, you have to have at least 2 people. Same thing if you do buckets of beer, they've decided that's okay. A beer and a shot, and I know a lot of this isn't going to apply to very many of you, but that's considered a single drink, even though a Boilermaker is considered a single drink. So it's a beer and a shot that's considered one.
What about beer flights?
Same thing. That well, no,
Okay.
you know what?
One unit, sort of.
Yeah.
You think?
Well, here's what I've put forth, and the ABC Commission is they've been back and forth over the last year, and I've advocated for the brewers with the flight. So what the ABC Commission, after going round and round and round, what they came up with is that as long as basically there's no beer in that more beer in that flight than there is in one of your large drinks, then it's okay. So they're saying basically keep it within a 16, maybe a 20-ounce pour at the most. So multiple shots. So we're good with that, and I think we're going to be seeing the rules come out on that hopefully within the next year. At this point in time, I am not doing anything with it as long as everybody's kind of following those rules, and happy to educate anybody who didn't hear it. So if I walk in and somebody's selling, 10 4-ounce pours in one flight, then we're going to have a talk about it, but I'm not going to do any kind of penalties. I just want everybody to get up to speed, and and do what's coming down the pipe. So you can't give away a drink or sell one at a price that is different from the usual or established price for one full business day. So if you're going to sell whatever beverage, whatever beer for $1 on Tuesdays, then it's got to be from the open of business to the close of business. Of course, if you run out, you run out, but that's a different story. So free or reduced drinks under this provision shall be offered to all customers, not just a segment of the population. So you can't say it's ladies' night, ladies get cheaper beer tonight. Now, if you're charging admission, then that's a different story. But if you're going to give one person a free beer, you've got to give everybody a free beer all day long, every day. So, or that day, I should say. So you get the idea.
And then you have
So you can't do like a lunch special, beers are cheaper at lunch
Right.
than they are at dinner. Okay.
Right.
all day.
All day. All day. So employee consumption, and we'll get into the weeds on that a little bit more here in a minute. No permittee or his employee shall be on the licensed premises after consuming alcoholic beverages except for under the following conditions. They have to be off duty for the remainder of that day or night. So if you are no longer working, you can have a beer, but you cannot be wearing a uniform or any kind of logo apparel from the business you're working for while you're consuming. And you cannot perform any on-duty services of any nature while or after consuming alcoholic beverages.
Could I ask a question about that, Stacy?
Yeah, just let me finish up,
Okay.
and then we'll hit it, because I know everybody's got comments.
You know it's coming.
Okay, so it's also unlawful for a permittee or his employee to become intoxicated on the licensed premises. All right, go.
Well, I got involved with the Downtown Association managing the recycling, the greening detail. And originally, people could stand there by the garbage can and tell people to compost their beer cups and drink a beer. What's the logic behind us not being allowed to drink a beer while we're pointing at a garbage can? I mean, we are on duty service of some kind, but
I don't know.
we've lost a lot of volunteers.
I wish I could explain that. Ask the ABC Commission is their rule. But it's predominantly for people that are handling or serving the beer. Now, if it's...
Well, I get that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm fine with the servers.
Yeah, I'm not really... I can't say that I recall ever running into somebody who's standing there watching a trash can as long as they're not wearing a shirt. I mean, we really wouldn't know any different. So, but if you're wearing a festival shirt or
Well, we all wear a festival shirt and name tags. I mean, we're on duty and
Yeah.
representing the Downtown Association. But it really does raise the question, like, what's the point of this?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. But I mean, if they're going to work afterwards and they're going to help monitor the crowd for impairment and problems, then maybe that's it. I don't know what the reason is. I really don't.
Can I get your side of the story of the some of the stuff that was online about an ALE agent outside with binoculars looking into a closed
Absolutely.
brewery with
Absolutely.
doors locked, nobody in there anymore?
We're very transparent. Okay, so backstory. A lot of things that we investigate like that, we've received complaints on. Now, sometimes those complaints are from the general public. Sometimes they're from a jilted employee. Sometimes they're from employees who know it's against the law and they don't want to get caught up in that. So if you receive a complaint or you hear it's going on or whatever the case is, you have to investigate it. If you go up and stick your nose to the glass, guess what? Everything changes. So a lot of places you can't get anywhere near them without them knowing that you're out there. So yes, sometimes we use binoculars just to see what's going on. I mean, I don't know how you would advise we do it differently, but whenever we receive a complaint, we are bound to investigate it.
So it's the situation that there's no customers in there. They're for the evening. They're not serving anymore. They're cleaning up after they're closed, and they're having a shift drink.
It's against the law. The cutoff for consuming alcoholic beverages is 2:30 in the morning, and if they're employees and they're working, they're still working.
Oh, so it's a time thing. It's not the fact that they.
Yeah,
if
you
they
can't-
were closed at 1, they'd still be able to have.
Well, then they're still employees. Now, if they're not working, if they're done working for the night, they're no longer wearing their company apparel,
So what if
they can absolutely have a
time
beer,
clock?
as long as it's not past 2:30.
What if they close at 1, they're done by
close up at 2, are they allowed to consume a beer between 2 and 2:30 in
Yes.
that establishment if they're not working?
Yes.
And they're not working.
No sales can happen after 2
And or
a.m.
wear their
Right.
uniform.
Right.
But they also can't work.
Here's
right?
Right, so they can't wash their
They have
glasses.
to completely
Right.
that glass must be cleaned by someone.
Listen, here's what somebody came up with, and I thought it was brilliant, is of course they can't be intoxicated, they can't be wearing those, they can't provide any more services. But basically somebody came up with the idea of, okay, let's have a designated employee. So tonight, you're gonna close up, you're gonna clean up, and we'll have our shift beer, and we'll go on home. I mean,
That's what we're having to do with Oktoberfest. There has to be one brewery employee who, because they're gonna clean up their own equipment, who doesn't drink.
Yeah.
Of course, they all wanna have a beer when they're there, but as long as they're not working,
Right.
they're allowed to drink.
Can I ask about?
again, they're the laws, it's what the legislators made up, it's what the ABC Commission did. I get paid to enforce the laws, I can't, I mean, that would be like if somebody walked up and punched one of you in the head, and I said, well, I don't really want to deal with that today. I mean, that's not how we do our jobs. As law enforcement officers, we're supposed to impart the laws fairly and evenly across society and do what have been put in place until there's a change that comes.
Can I ask about volunteers in the same kind of premise? So you have a volunteer-based core event. Your volunteers sign in and out, so they are done with their shifts. Are we responsible if that volunteer doesn't take off their volunteer shirt after that and is sitting there having a beer?
We can what if everything, but I mean,
That's a
mean,
realistic
it's a
scenario.
I know, but it is
Very
real.
thing
But so
for us.
as festival coordinators, you need to make your rules very clear. I mean,
What we've
so
done
technically,
Turn inside
yes.
out.
Yeah,
Well,
turn
what we've
inside, I
done
can live
this
with
year
that.
Well, we can tell them that all day long. We're just saying, what if someone doesn't comply to that?
What does that mean to us?
Well, it could mean depending on the circumstance, the situation, could the festival end up being fined or sanctioned? Absolutely.
Well, that's good information
but
for
I
us to have
think-
to give to the volunteers. Like,
Yeah.
if you don't take your shirt off, there are grand consequences for the festival.
Yeah, and here's an interesting thing that I heard. I haven't heard of anybody actually doing it, but I was told that elsewhere in the state, somewhere in the state, that employers are actually taking their employees to small claims court to pay the fines that they receive against their permits because of their actions, even though they've been trained, they know better. I've seen in other areas where they have a kind of a list of some of these rules and the training that all the volunteers have to go through, and they have to sign it, and the festival managers will keep that on file. So if something comes up, at least you have something to say, hey, I told them, I trained them, you just have to do the best you can, and you figure anytime we show up, we're going to start asking questions.
Well, let's
And-
make them all sign contracts that say they understand that.
yeah, so if I were to approach somebody that was drinking and be like, so why are you doing this? And they say, well, they told me I wasn't supposed to wear my shirt, but I did it anyways, and they couldn't really see me. I mean, we're not going to pursue it. We're going to get with you and say, okay, listen, you have a problem here.
One thing we've decided to do this year is, instead of having special volunteer t-shirts made, they get a t-shirt just like everybody else. We're doing aprons that, will have pockets and stuff. Different people will need different things, but that apron is saying you are on duty. When the next person comes in for your shift, they get your apron, you're off duty. Whoever's wearing the apron is very easy to see. They shouldn't be drinking. So that's our way we've decided this year to try to get
But is that allowed?
Yeah.
Is
Well,
that-
we sell our shirts.
Hey, if that's your
the same
uniform, that's your
shirt.
uniform.
So your volunteers
I mean, you
take
don't
the
even
same
have
shirts
to
as the
require
retail shirts, is what you're saying?
volunteer to wear a t-shirt, but
No,
I
you
just feel
don't.
like that's a
Identifier is
perk
the one
of
with-
volunteering.
You
Right.
put the logo on your
Just take
pants
that
so
off.
you want to take the pants.
They got the logo, we got the logo on the aprons,
Ours
really
is-
nice, and those are reusable, so we save money next year.
Is there any rules for brewers drinking? If they're not serving, they need to sample beers or.
And that's another thing I know the ABC Commission is starting to consider. Apparently, and it's been explained to me that with the craft beer and the way it's packaged and shipped, that there is a greater possibility that something could go wrong with a keg versus Budweiser, who everything is the same, everything is very uniform.
Yes.
Yeah, and so there's more variables. So they're listening to the suggestions that it may be acceptable to sample the beer, but with that thought, there shouldn't be anybody that should register anything. You shouldn't be sampling so much beer when you're testing a couple of tap lines that you should become impaired. And to answer your question that you asked earlier, I'll be happy to speak on that. Is at that festival, again, there was a complaint. We were told that last year a lot of people became very intoxicated at that festival, so we went to check it out. What I expected when I was there is to maybe see some intoxicated subjects that had been at the festival goers, and to work on that problem. Maybe some underage kids that crept in, maybe some drug use, but pretty unlikely being as it was right in front of the courthouse and jail. But that's what we went to look at, and so a lot of the breweries were there and they were consuming, which I was floored by. I did not expect that, and apparently it's one of those rumors that had gotten around through the brewery culture that it was okay for them to consume during the festivals. But anybody that has a retail permit knows that you cannot consume and serve beer. You just can't do it. So at that point, we waited until about the end of business for the day. Some of the places were actually running out of beer at that point in time. We just kind of made notes about what we were seeing, contacted the ABC Commission, because let's go back to where I said I don't have the authority to shut down a festival or take anybody's permit away. I don't. So I called the ABC Commission legal staff and said, here's what I'm seeing. I'm not really sure what you would like done with this. And what they said is that if somebody has a booth and they have even one person who's not been consuming alcoholic beverages, they can stay open. If everybody has been consuming, we're going to ask them to close their booth and go ahead and pack up and call it a day. With that in mind, because we saw so many people drinking, we did Alka-Seltzer them voluntarily, just so that we could determine if anybody was there, if they could continue business that hadn't been drinking. Again, it's not what we wanted to do, but we didn't have any other way of monitoring it. Because the one thing I do know that at this point in my career is that I get lied to for a living. I think I've talked to 3 people who've been completely honest about everything they've ever done. So we just never know who's telling us the truth and not. So we have to verify. And I didn't want to do that, but I didn't really see where we had an option. Even more than that, I hate that the media has blown it into something, because like I said, we don't, for lack of better terms, we don't kiss and tell. We don't deal with the business and spout what we do to the newspaper. We just don't. It's harmful. It's harmful to us, because the next time we go to that business, they're angry at us. If you're working, if you're changing tap lines, changing kegs, checking IDs, any of that.
But you were saying, if I understood you correctly, that at that festival, that Beer City Festival or whichever, that at least because it wasn't made an announcement that you were doing this, because that's what it seemed like from outsider telling, again, just from hearsay, that at least one person, you were giving them that chance that just one person to be sober and blow 0 or whatever. You were saying that other people could, but hardly so many of them had not one person sober. Is that what you're saying? So they weren't following the rules. And
they had alcohol remaining in their system. Now, the other thing I can say is, to most everybody's credit, all kidding aside about getting lied to for a living, most of them were very honest, and we didn't have to Alka-Seltzer them. I think there was probably, I don't know, maybe 5. I would guess off the top of my head. I don't quote me on that without going back and checking the notes on everything. But most everybody was good about it and said, yes, we've all been drinking. And they very peacefully went ahead and broke down and put their stuff away. So I think overall everybody was very professional, and it just is what it is. And unfortunately somebody got bad information that spread through the community, so we're just going to get it right. That's the goal.
Can I ask one more interpretation? Performing any duty or service, because this actually just shocked me. I was just in a brand new brewery the other day. Grand opening, not even brewing yet, happened to know the assistant brewer who's just in the crowd having a beer, and started asking him questions about the brewery, and he politely said, I can't tell you anything.
Well,
He really did.
And
you know,
again, if he's not on the clock, I mean, I'm not gonna have any heartburn
I
over,
mean, I
over
guess
somebody
that's
who's
what he
there.
was looking at was
I know.
that's, I mean, and they're
Well,
brand new, and so
and-
they want to do it
well,
all by the book.
And again, because of the way everything's been portrayed in the media, everybody's scared to death. I mean, we're not what's being portrayed. I mean, anybody that's worked with us closely should be able to say, no, we've worked with them. This is what they do. This is how they help us. If they see a problem, yeah, we're gonna deal with it. But normally, that's after unless it's something egregious, it's normally after we've gone through counseling training, talking to oral warnings, written warnings, things like that. I wouldn't have a
Like
problem with somebody
describing
talking about how
your
cool their
brewery
beer
system,
is.
or
You know, I don't
just,
care
you know,
about that.
what's your tank and
Yeah,
what do you use?
he's
and
not
that.
punched
He
in,
probably
he's not
shouldn't have had a
serving,
beer,
he's not
knowing who
brewing.
it was if he was there to sell.
No, he wasn't. No, he was just out in the crowd, and he's a friend, and we're all out in the crowd. But he says because I'm here, I can't perform a duty, and I'm an assistant brewer.
That's going to the nth right there.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
The likelihood is he had a manager on duty that was taking responsibility of the work, and he was not on duty.
No, he definitely wasn't on duty,
Right.
but
He's saying he was performing a job
He-
function by explaining.
part of his
it.
job function as assistant brewer is
Yeah,
talking to people and telling. I mean, I think
They're
it's crazy,
taking
but
it very
I think
literally.
that
They're
must
taking
have
it
been.
very
And
literally
they
at
literally
that
don't even
point.
have their license yet. I mean, they're not even
They're
brewing
taking
yet.
it literally. I have a question about technical assistance on site. So a brewery representative, can they, once they're on site, we're purchasing the kegs from them, we are operating, we are pouring, and we have a problem.
Mhm. They can provide assistance.
Can they help?
Yes. And let's see, somewhere in here, nonprofit SOT permits is what I put in here for y'all. The thing, if you are operating under an SOT, you and your volunteers are in charge of serving the beverages. So nobody comes in under their special event permit, and it's you. Now you can have a brewer, and they don't even have to have a permit for this. They can come in and they can check tap lines, they can swap kegs, they can deal with the refrigeration units, they can provide all those services. They just can't sell and serve their own alcohol.
Right.
And again, this is the way the rules have always been. And then that special event permit came in, so now things are kind of changing. And usually when a new law comes in, everything that was in place may need to be reconsidered, may need to be tweaked a bit, but they haven't gotten to that point yet. And I'm not sure, it may stay like this, just to delineate, okay, they're here, but they're not serving and selling. So if you're under an SOT permit, the thing that you all have to understand is that that's your business for the day. So they can come in and assist you, but you're not assisting them.
Right.
So I personally, I wouldn't see, but even if they're doing that, now if they're doing that, given that if they're handling those technical services, they still can't drink while they're there. Again, if they're done for the day, they're not going to change any more kegs or tap lines or handle refrigeration units, this, that, or the other thing, then they're good to go.
Also,
But they can talk about their beer too. They just can't. They just
yeah, they can be there as a representative for the. Also, just in terms of volunteers, this was another kind of, it may have been an unsubstantiated rumor. At a recent event that ALE did show up at the event and ended up breathalyzing the volunteers that were pouring.
I don't even know.
That's what I was wondering, whether that was a rumor or that actually happened.
No.
And also, it's like, when would that occur? Would that occur just if you observed
If we observed,
visual
yes.
impairment in people who were
Well,
serving?
we observed somebody drinking. We may. But no, as far as events go, I think we probably had one agent pop into one or two, and it was reported to me there were no problems. The bigger events, even the whole Oscar Blues fiasco, again, I still don't know why they didn't just have volunteers handle everything. And it's beyond me, but it's just a kind of a knee-jerk reaction. The same thing with the whole Mountain True thing. Again, just so you all understand, they called me in July and asked me some questions about who needed permits and who didn't. That was the last I heard of them. Then I walk into work in August, and all of a sudden I'm being blindsided by the media because I shut down a festival when the only thing I did is answer questions just like I did here today. So
Was the Oscar Bloom thing a volunteer versus employer? I thought it was the out-of-state beer issue.
it was that too. It was a little bit of
But they
everything.
didn't
But
have a volunteer staff pooling.
yeah, they had, right, they wanted to come in and serve their own.
I was
But
just one of the
if they'd had volunteers,
beneficiaries of the
handled
thing.
it. But even then, some of that was an approved product. So there was some of that, but it was very few places, it was like 4 places or something, so it
I
wasn't.
mean, I was kind of happy when I got the email, said, we're giving you your
I
money
know,
back
right?
and show up.
And come in and drink.
Yeah.
But again, you know, that was the ABC Commission. Talked to them and said, here's what's going on, and they came up, their attorneys and the attorneys from Oscar Blues negotiated the middle ground to still make the festival a success.
I do have one last question in regards, once again, to volunteers. A volunteer is done, they are signed off, they are now off duty. Can I give them the value of a beer? Can I give them a way to redeem themselves a beer when, as a perk of volunteering?
A token or something.
A token.
Yeah.
That is of, you
Yeah,
know,
well,
monetary value.
Again, I personally wouldn't have an issue with that. I mean, if they're volunteers, it's a comp, you
We
know, I
do that,
mean, you're not.
2 beer tokens
Yeah.
for us.
Yeah, I think the only time it would come into play is if, you know, there's a whole lot of selling going on and then you've given it away, you haven't given it away to everybody, but you really get into splitting hairs with something like that.
The
I mean-
difficulty that we've run into is giving them something that we'd like to be able to give them something they could trade in at a brewery somewhere else, because we have second shift volunteers who can't drink.
Sure.
They end up with tokens, but it's too late to use them.
Yeah.
And in
So,
that
and
case,
that's-
Card, compliment meal, I mean,
well, in
We're
that
trying to
case,
figure
can
that
we,
out.
Yeah.
can we comp them, you know, a package, so you guys only do draft, right, at those events?
Right.
But like, say for instance, Laugh is an event where we are gonna have both packaged products that we purchased and draft, you know, cans. Can we comp them a can at the end of their shift for those second shifts, or is that kind of
you start running
blurry
into those
lines?
things because we're talking rule violations
Yeah.
of this stuff. So those are the ones where I would say get with the ABC Commission and see what they
Okay.
think. I mean, I can't answer that for them.
Right.
I just can't.
Okay, I have a question. My daughter runs a nonprofit, and she called me. She said, we're going to have an event on our site. We've gotten the beer and wine donated, and do I need a permit? And I said, no, I don't think so. And so she called ABC to be sure, and ABC said no. And then, you know, being overly, you know, really cautious, she called the city. And the city said, oh, absolutely, and they charged her $150 for a permit. Does she have to do that?
If the city says so. I mean, they.
Okay, so if the
they-
city says you do, even if
Yeah,
you say,
because-
and
yeah.
ABC says no,
Right.
you better do what the city says.
Because the way the country's legal system is set up, so there's federal laws, and then they're pretty blanket generic. Now, a state can take the federal laws and they can make them tighter. County can take the state laws and make them tighter, and a city can make either of their laws and restrict them more. But they can't open anybody that's superseded by the larger agency. They can't open them up more. So if they want to make you get a permit, I guess they can.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah. So industry members can help with setting up and changing of kegs. We talked about that, or other rented or loaned equipment. There's actually a whole host of things. They can donate money, this, that, or the other thing. You just have to get the ABC permission. They have to do an industry approval form just so the ABC Commission is good with it, especially when there's a retailer involved. So if you have a brewer and then like a restaurant or bar on the same bill, especially if the industry member is paying for it, that's considered cooperative advertising. Most of the time during festivals and things of the like, the ABC Commission, because the money's going for nonprofit, will go ahead and approve things like that, but you gotta run it by them, get their nod of approval.
So what that means is it is okay to put multiple breweries
Yes,
logos on
absolutely.
things as long as you have the industry approval for it.
Well, no, if it's just breweries, they're on the state is set up
Well,
in
like-
tier levels.
Well, let's say if it's like the Laugh poster.
Yeah.
And it's got all the sponsors, which will be restaurants
Yeah,
and
so,
brewers.
right.
So
Then, yeah, you need
that's
to check
okay
it out.
as long as we have the industry approval for it.
Yeah.
With the beer thing?
Yes.
still on?
Okay.
Yes.
That's okay.
Which y'all did. You got
Which
approval.
we did.
We didn't put our logos on because we didn't have that form yet.
But we still have like on-site signage and things like that we now have an opportunity to because we have that form approved.
And I was impressed. Y'all got an atta girl from the chief legal counsel up there. What a great job you did get out there.
If you guys need some
So-
hard forms filled out,
You
go
may
this
want to
girl.
distribute that information so that everybody, share it.
Charging people.
Well, I'm serious. Share that information. It
Oh,
helps
I will,
everybody out.
and I absolutely plan to, which is partially why I'm sitting at this meeting.
Yeah, and if I had copies of it, I don't get notification, I don't get copies. I mean, Renee sent me those, I think, because I had CC'd her on some of the correspondence, and because of that, she included me, but normally I don't know.
Mm.
So if we show up at a festival and we see that, if y'all have a letter, an email, the stamped form, I'd go ahead and have a copy of it right there on premise, because if somebody comes in and asks, whether it's us or somebody from the ABC Commission, because they come out and spot check things once in a while too, or local ABC, at least you can say, here it is, I win.
Yeah. Oh yeah, covering all our bases on that. Alcohol.
No, if you're a store, so here's the way it's set up. The state is set up in a tier system. So industry members, that's going to be your manufacturers of alcohol, and then your wholesalers, who are the people who distribute the alcohol, and then there's the retailers, the people who sell the alcohol to their customers. So those three tiers are set up so that basically, if a store or a bar, if you want to push whoever, what's your business? Yeah,
Zebulon.
okay, so if you got a store and you want to say, man, I love Zebulon beer, I'm going to push Zebulon beer today, you can do that. But what Zebulon can't do is say, I'm going to push your, is it Karen?
It's a nonprofit.
Yeah, okay, Carolina Food. So they can't say, I'm pushing Carolina Food. Of course, nonprofit's different anyway, so let's go with the store your store, ABC. So yeah, they can't push you, but you can push them. And what that does is, the whole idea behind it is that it keeps the playing field even, so that a big manufacturer with tons of money that they can't even possibly spend in their lifetime can't buy out everything and walk into this bar and say, I'm from the big beer company and I'm going to pay you $5,000 a month to feature my products and nobody else's. What it does is, by keeping everything very even like that, it keeps the playing field so that everybody can keep playing. So the small breweries can keep playing and can thrive and survive in the community without being bought out by the big guy.
So, question on that is the like our website for our festival, our website and our advertising. Do the breweries have to have permission for us to show their logos on those?
Well, I would refer to the law offices of Ward and Smith, who there are intellectual property laws. Okay, and what that means is, it doesn't matter if it's a brewery or if it's John Deere. You can't print a hat and use their logo without their authorization.
Well, if they've authorized us to do that, there's nothing
Probably
has to go
AOA or
through
ABC.
ABC or anything like that.
Yeah, they just have to authorize it. I would make sure you have that authorization.
So along the same line with advertising in a newspaper, say for a restaurant, Fridays, Holland Brewing Day can get.
That's okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Because it's the retailer.
You're pushing them, they're not pushing you.
Is that the same for private clubs?
In a publication, yes, but they never advertise it. The exception might be some of these outlying areas where there's certain ways that things can be voted in. So some jurisdictions, you have to be a hotel, motel, or a restaurant in order to sell beer, and you have to have a mixed beverage permit. And some of them at private levels are also part of that equation. But
Alcohol is private, could you advertise it?
the drinks, but yeah, they can do it Facebook, electronic, newspaper.
So does that extend to social media as well?
Yes. Here's where things get fuzzy because of the whole brewery boom. Is things start to get fuzzy because you have the brewer, and then the brewer has all these beers. So that brewery can advertise its own beers, but they can't advertise other beers. So like at a brewery, Their employees can wear the brewery shirt, but they can't wear shirts that advertise the specific beer. It's really weird.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it can't say Fat Tire, but it can't say New Belgium.
Right.
It's a uniform.
Wow,
That
that's interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy. But now let's go ahead and break that down further, because most of those places have retail permits, which means that they sell beer and they may sell other people's beer. So you can advertise things on the inside of the building, but like even an employee at any brewery, any business, you can't. So if I work at Bob's Bar, I can't wear a Budweiser hat. I can't wear you can't put one person's product over another with the clothing, because normally they're
Does that apply only to people who are in the serving capacity, or does that apply to every single person? So say you're in the office
right.
or something.
Yeah, you can't push one person's beer over another in that business. You can run drink specials. You can advertise those drink specials.
But as far as
but you can't hang a
uniforms,
sign
like
on the outside of the
so
building.
say if I'm walking in and I work in an office context, with a retailer for something like
Yeah.
and I'm wearing a particular brewery, is that
PBR shirt. Yeah, no, you can't do it.
Can't do that.
I know, right?
Interesting.
Crazy, huh?
I thought you
Can we
were.
have
Oh,
a
I'm
large
gonna change my whole wardrobe.
This has been very, very, very informative and thoughtful, and I think that what I hear from Stacy, she's got a bunch of cards on the table.
Yep.
She is more than willing to meet with people, take phone calls, help you sort out your issues, send you to the right place to do it. We might try to do this again in a month or so.
Sure.
And see if there's more interest and more people coming. And I think this was enormously helpful to us.
No, it's late, but I do want to check the wristbands. Somebody brought that up, and I just want to make sure that all of your serving staff understands that if you're in doubt about somebody's age, check their ID yourself, because if something goes wrong, it's the person who's serving that alcohol that's going to take the hit for it, not the person that put a wristband on. So anytime you have a doubt, make sure you step forward and do the same thing. Make sure you put those wristbands on tightly enough for the gate people so they can't be slipped off and handed to somebody else. And just have your staff monitor the crowd for passing off drinks, intoxicated patrons, drug activity, fighting disorderly conduct. So that's it. I'm done.
Thank you.
Thank you.